Mark 4:24, after our passage for today, Jesus told his hearers, "Pay attention to what you hear. The measure you give will be the measure you get, and still more will be given to you." Notice that admonition. The measure you give will be the measure you get. We typically think of hearing as a form of receiving, not giving. How do giving and listening go together? When you listen to a teaching, if you trust the teacher, you give yourself to the teaching, in large part because you trust the teacher. If you do not trust the teacher, you give yourself to a skeptical response. You might say, "I'm not so sure," which means I'm not yet ready to believe what I'm hearing. Which also means I'm not yet ready to act. These responses connect. Pay attention to what you hear. The people have just heard from Jesus about soils and seeds. It's a common image for people in Galilee, one rich in farmland and abundant crops. People would have easily recognized the image Jesus used. But what is it that he's saying? Twice he says to this group, "Listen." At the beginning and the end of the parable, he admonishes the people, "Listen." The one who has ears to hear, listen. So as we listen, let's remember the context. Jesus has already created quite a stir. Chapter 1, verse 37. "Everyone is searching for you," the disciples say. 1:45. Jesus could no longer go into a town openly, but stayed out in the country, and people came to him from every quarter. Chapter 2, verse 2, in Capernaum. So many gathered around that there was no longer room for them, not even in front of the door. 3:7. A great multitude followed him. Hearing all that he was doing, they came to him in great numbers from Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, beyond the Jordan, and the region around Tyre and Sidon. And then chapter 3, verse 10. So that all who had diseases pressed upon him to touch him. The crowd was so big he had to get into the boat. Chapter 3, verse 20. And the crowd came together again, so that they could not even eat. 3:22. A crowd was sitting around him, such that his family members could not get to him. And in today's passage, teaching by the sea, such a very large crowd gathered around him. Yet once again, he got into a boat to teach. Yes, Jesus has created quite a stir. Not everyone is thrilled with Jesus or his growing fame. In several cases already, the Gospel of Mark shows that Jesus encountered skepticism and even resistance. The story of the forgiven paralytic, Jesus eating with tax collectors and sinners, his healing on the Sabbath, his disciples not following the traditional Sabbath interpretations. The conflict had grown to the point that his family had been dispatched to collect him on suspicion that he had lost his mind. Saying things like, "My son, your sins are forgiven," seemed a little crazy to some people. Talking about how his disciples can't fast while the bridegroom is with them sounds ominously apocalyptic. No, not everyone is crazy about what Jesus is teaching. Clearly, he had created quite a stir. Imagine the crowd swirling around him nonstop. Imagine the hotly debated opinions. Some people believe he's demon-possessed, as Veronica showed last week with the religious leaders who questioned the source of Jesus' power. Others Others, on the other hand, were convinced that he's the promised king of Israel. They were ready, according to John chapter 6, to start an insurrection and make Jesus king of Israel by force. Many, many more people saw him as a miracle worker, and they desperately wanted what they could get from him. Again, all kinds of people can have all manner of opinions about Jesus. So how is it that we listen to such a man? Our passage today begins and ends, as I've noted, with this command to listen. That command means more than simply opening up the sense of hearing. Listen attentively. Listen truthfully. There's more going on here, Jesus is saying, than just the usual Sunday school lesson. In his explanation to the disciples about the sower and the soils, in the subsequent verses after the passage we read today, Jesus actually mixes the metaphor of seeds and soils. The seed is the Word of God in the parable, and the soils are the various kinds of hearers. But down later in the explanation, the seeds are the hearers. They hear the Word of God and accept it and bear fruit 30 and 60 and 100-fold. Let's work with that variation and think about all these hearers of Jesus' parable. Some hearers, like the religious leaders already mentioned, were hard-hearted and rejected Jesus' words. You see, some seeds fell on the path beside the field, and the birds, symbolizing Satan, came and snatched them up. Hearts hardened toward Jesus are softened toward Satan. No fruit. Some seeds fell on stony soil. Commentators note that the area of Galilee is rich with good land for growing crops, but there is in some places a layer of limestone not far below the surface of the ground. The topsoil is thin. Rains quickly saturate that ground and just as quickly drain away. Seeds in the soil can sprout quickly and seem to be off to a good start. But then the sun's heat comes, and the quickly dissipating moisture makes these plants just as quickly wither and die. Again, no fruit. What happens when we hearers of Jesus' words face pressure, maybe even ridicule, because we identify with Jesus? Some seeds fall in thorny soil. Anyone who has ever tried to keep a garden free of weeds and has decided not to use chemical pesticides knows just how hard it is for plants to flourish in weedy soil. Again, no crop, no fruit. This part of the parable may be the most relevant for most of us. The cares of the world and the desire for riches choke out the word from our hearts. At precisely this point, Jesus' warning about being careful about what we listen to should ring in our ears. The desire for wealth and status is a siren song. It has derailed and neutralized many a Christian disciple. It is exactly why Jesus told his disciples in another place, "Where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be." Only in the good soil do we see the crop, the fruit, and its bountiful harvest. Lots of people have been listening to Jesus. Some reject him outright. Some respond quickly, become enamored with Jesus, and follow him as long as things are exciting and going the right way. Some listeners can't let go of their self-preoccupied dreams. Like the followers in another story, they want to postpone obedience to Jesus until a more convenient time. They're quite taken with Jesus, but they have big plans for life. And then there are some who receive Jesus' teaching and obey. Not without struggle, of course, but trustingly, openly, fruitfully. We might want to think how our hearts are combinations of these soils and seeds. Sometimes my heart is hard and stony and unreceptive. And sometimes it's open and pliable and responsive. Thinking this way is okay to a point, but then we need to do a kind of all things considered exercise, a cumulative case analysis. On balance, do I listen receptively and respond obediently? What ultimately wins out? When push comes to shove, in my hearing Jesus, does my life show that I'm listening? And does the fruit follow? Be careful how you hear.